What's up, everybody? What's up, MGTOW? Alright, so I'm back again with part 3 of responding to Crimson Crusader's Comment Wars series. This is going to be on his Comment Wars part 3 video. Now, in the beginning of the video, he kind of starts with a clip that is further into the video, so I'll just kind of respond briefly to that part of the clip, which he's kind of asking or confused about my libertarian ideas again. And to me, because I'm a libertarian and I think that the government shouldn't really tell people what to do or how to do things or be involved in people's social lives and private lives and things like that, the only real solution that I see to the problem is by cutting, government mandated female hiring quotas, affirmative action, welfare benefits, and a host of other benefits that women receive from the government to kind of balance out how society treats women and treats men. Because you could take a more authoritarian approach to trying to fix gynocentrism, which is typified kind of by like Islamic culture, in which they literally use force to stop women from acting on hypergamy and from allowing men to become too gynocentric by basically forcing women into marriage and forcing women out of the workplace, which I don't believe in that. But at the same time, I don't believe that the government should be forcing companies to hire women and giving tax benefits or tax money to women that's taken by force from men that are productive in the society. Now, in the section where you're talking about the reasons for divorce, the amount of divorces initiated by women, and the consequences of a no-fault divorce, really, it doesn't really matter the reasons for divorce. The reasons for divorce are kind of immaterial in this context. And the fact that you're saying that people use no-fault divorce, people don't use no-fault divorce. No-fault divorce is the law. There's only one divorce law, at least in the United States, and that is no-fault divorce. So no matter who's at fault, the higher earning spouse has to pay alimony and part with 50% of their property. And if it's a man, he's 80% of the time going to lose custody of his children. And this is no matter what the condition of the man is, because I'm assuming that if the man is the higher earning spouse, then he's probably a productive citizen in society. So to say that in 80% of the cases that the man is unfit to raise the children or have access to his children, and in fact the decision whether or not the man can get custody or even access to see his children seems to be placed squarely on the female decision and in the family courts. So again, the problem with no-fault divorce is the trend of hypergamy. And we can see from statistics that I showed in the last video, and I'll include those statistics again, that around 70% of marriages, the man makes more money than the woman. So in these cases, when a divorce happens, which is 50% of the time, and 70% of the time it's initiated by women, it doesn't matter what the reason is, the woman is still going to receive alimony, child support, and around 50% of the property from the marriage. Now, as far as the reasons for divorce go, I don't really see much of a big difference between the number one reason I quoted for women initiating divorce, which is dissatisfaction, and the number one reason that you've quoted for women initiating divorce, which is women feeling that the quality of the relationship has declined. I mean, there's not really much of a difference between those two statements, dissatisfaction or the quality has declined. And the fact that women feel like the quality of the relationship has declined, is somebody's feelings really an objective way to quantify the value of the relationship. So again, looking at all these laws together, affirmative action, government mandated female hiring quotas, welfare benefits, other types of benefits provided to women, and then looking at no-fault divorce and how it's assumed that even if the woman's cheating, even if the woman's doing something wrong, she still gets a certain amount of property from the husband and custody of the children. It's showing a very large social bias towards women and towards the well-being of women at the expense of men, which can be contextualized as gynocentrism. So again, you say that you're going to disprove hypergamy, but it's not possible to disprove hypergamy. Because, again, I'm showing that you can look at the statistics, the vast majority of women are married to men who make more money than them. Okay, so in this next part, you tried to accuse MGTOW of being like feminists because I guess you believe that gynocentrism is a conspiracy made up by MGTOW instead of a biological reality that exists throughout nature and throughout most of the animal kingdom, and specifically in animals where the male is the dominant in a sexually dimorphic species. So the reason why me personally, and I think that a lot of MGTOW focus on the things that are going wrong in society with women is because there's already a huge focus on things that are going wrong with men. I mean, you can look at the Gillette commercial, you can look at feminism, you can look at the new American Psychological Association mandates for dealing with men and boys. And the fact is, there's already $1 billion industry called feminism that's focusing on everything that's wrong with men. And of course, our legal system already restricts most of the negative traits of men, like murder, rape, and theft, and using coercive force and violence against people is very illegal and considered very wrong. But in opposition to that, if a woman cheats on her husband, she's still rewarded with 50% of his property, custody of the children, and that is a problem for society. That's a problem. And I mean, if you can't agree that a woman that cheats on her husband should not get custody of the children and not get 50% of his property and rewarded alimony payments, then I don't know what to say to you about that. Because I mean, that's just wrong. And again, one of the many differences between MGTOW and feminism is that MGTOW is not advocating for use of government force to enforce preferential treatment of males on society, which feminism is. When you look at affirmative action, female hiring quotas, welfare benefits that are given to women at the expense of men, these are all legally mandated and legislated laws that force people in society to give females preferential treatment over men, and sometimes at men's expense. So again, you're going back into hypergamy and marriage, and I don't really need to present evidence to prove any individual person's motive when the fact is that the laws are set up for the higher earning spouse to pay alimony. And due to the fact that there's a trend that women tend to marry men that earn more money than them around 70% of the time, that these laws that are set up are going to disproportionately affect men rather than women. And so, while I can't actually find the statistics on the exact percentage of women who get alimony payments after divorce, it's much higher than the amount of men that get alimony after divorce, and it's disproportionate to the amount of men that get divorced that earn less than their female spouse. Because if you look at it, the amount of people that get alimony payments after divorce, only 3% of the total amount of people that get alimony payments after divorce are men. And you can look at social trends and that's kind of what we're talking about here when we're looking at gynocentrism as a social trend, and the fact that society on a whole and in general tends to want to provide benefits and preferential treatment to women. And you can see that with some of these articles that are being written about alimony, where feminists are now claiming that they should get rid of alimony laws because of the fact that 3% of women have to pay alimony to men. And there's several articles, which I'll link below, where they're saying now that women have to pay alimony, we should just get rid of alimony, because since there's no egalitarian way to say, well, only men should have to pay alimony to women, they can't do that. So now they're just saying, let's get rid of it. But they weren't saying that when the vast majority of men were paying alimony to women, even though they still are. But now that even 3% of women are being affected by this, now they want to get rid of it. Now, there's a Forbes article that suggests that hundreds of thousands of men should be receiving alimony that are not receiving alimony, and you could say what you want about that, but in my opinion, it would seem that if there were hundreds of thousands of women that men should be paying alimony to, the courts and the police would be all over that, either putting those men in jail or garnishing their paychecks and things like that, which does happen constantly to men. And the fact that it's not enforced on the other side for women to pay alimony to men should clue you in that there's some type of social bias towards the fact that men are supposed to provide resources to women and women are not supposed to provide resources to men. It's just a general social attitude. And then we've got other articles titled things like, an end to alimony would be good for women. Now, why is it not good for men as well? Why isn't ending alimony good for people? You see what I'm saying? These articles are biased and socially acceptable things to say. Now, if a vast majority of men came out and said, an end to alimony would be good for men, what do you really think that the social response to that would be? It would be, oh, you're deadbeats, you don't want to pay for this and that, and you're a loser. I mean, this is just my speculation on that concept, but I think it's a good educated guess as to what would happen. Okay, in the section where you're talking about affirmative action, yeah, I agree that all types of affirmative action should just be cut, but at the same time, also government hiring mandates that are specifically targeted to any group of people, and welfare should be cut also. And all of these things together contribute to the fact that women don't need to enter into relationships with men, which in the past they did because the government wasn't handing out jobs and welfare money and all types of other benefits to women. And now you're asking for examples of this, and you don't see how private corporations have to follow government mandates, but I'll point you to an article that's showing how in California they've created a new law that all corporations must have at least one woman on the board of CEOs. And the article is called California's Publicly Held Corporations Will Have to Include Women on Their Boards. And that's from the New York Times. And there are several other articles on this law that has been passed in California. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see similar laws pop up in other states very soon in the future. So to say that there's no evidence that there's actual laws on the books that provide preferential treatment to females beyond just some typical social niceties that men offer to women is false. There's lots of laws on the books that provide government-mandated preferential treatment to females. Now, your last point that gynocentrism is some conspiracy made up by MGTOW is just really hard for me to believe that you really think that. because it's basically a generally known fact that gynocentrism is the natural state of humans and the natural state of most sexually dimorphic species, where the male is the larger, physically dominant part of the species. And as I've shown in the clips in the previous videos, which I might include some of under this video, you can see that in nature, males instinctively protect women and attack other males that are trying to gain sexual access or just access to the females and access to the territory. So you can look at all these biological studies and see males fighting each other. I mean, in some species it's very obvious, like for instance deer, elk, rams. You can see that the males have specific body parts, specifically horns, just for fighting each other, where the females of that species do not have horns for fighting each other. So to say that it's some type of conspiracy that nature naturally compels men to fight each other over resources and access to females is just being completely disingenuous. Saying, oh, you've got to have a lot of statistics and evidence and scientific evidence to prove this. There's tons of it. You just have to look at it. It's not my fault if you've never watched the Discovery Channel, you never watched National Geographic before. I can't help you on that. I mean, you have to look at the evidence before you try to refute my evidence and call me a conspiracy theorist, when there's tons and tons and hundreds of years of scientific evidence to prove this. I mean, I don't even believe in Darwin's theory of evolution fully, but I mean, he does make some good points in it, and especially his theory of sexual selection. So to say that I have to prove to you that gynocentrism is a theory, I think that you need to prove that gynocentrism is a conspiracy theory, because it's pretty generally accepted in most societies, not even Western societies, that men protect women, from other men, and men create a suitable environment that's safe for women, like houses and things like that. So again, like when you're talking about hypergynocentrism, or when I'm talking about hypergynocentrism and all of these effects that are secondary effects in society, like affirmative action and hiring quotas and no-fault divorce and preferential treatment of women and those type of aspects, it is harder to prove that it's a direct result of our biological nature that we tend to give preferential treatment to women at the expense of men. But to say that it's not natural for males of almost every species, again, I'm talking about sexually dimorphic species where the male is the dominant physically, that those males don't protect the females at almost all cost, is a theory. I just can't accept that, because you're going to have to present a lot of evidence to me that nature doesn't exist. I don't have to present evidence to you that nature exists. You have to present evidence to me that nature doesn't exist. Because most scientists, most biologists, most anthropologists, and pretty much anybody that's just looks at life and looks at reality would agree that men are more protective of women, physically at least, than women are of men. And for you to say that it's a conspiracy theory, you just kind of lost me on that one. So I'm just going to finish this one here and stay tuned for the next part. Other than that, have a good day and go MGTOW.